UK nature is in a state of crisis. We are in the bottom 10% of all countries worldwide when rated for biodiversity. Nearly half of our species have seen a decline in number since the 1970s, and 1 in 7 of our species are facing extinction. As such, some individuals are choosing to take matters into their own hands to help preserve our natural world.
Yeah, I'm Ben Barker, and I'm the secretary of the BS3 Wildlife Group in Bristol, where we're trying to set up a nature reserve in an urban area. Most nature reserves are in green spaces, like one we're in at the moment. But that's fine. But if we want to have wildlife in cities, we've got to think about, well, what do we do to make the city attractive to wildlife? One of the keys is gardens. The universities, UE and a couple of other universities, did some research 2 or 3 years ago, and they found that sort of square yard for square yard, the average garden was more productive of flowers and insects and other things than any other space, even the nature reserves. If you're living in an urban area, a lot of the space is gardens. Individual gardens may be quite small, but if you add them together, it's a pretty big space. And so we're encouraging people to do things in their garden to make them more friendly for wildlife.
Gardening for nature. It's a romantic idea, but how realistic is the idea of an urban nature reserve? Well, to answer that, I've come to speak to some of the local residents who are participating in the Wild Street programme that Ben Barker is organising.
So what it means, it's an idea of neighbours getting together with small gardens, but trying to create an environment where things are a little bit more wildlife friendly, and we learn from each other about how to make our gardens more wildlife friendly, and a way of trying to create a space or patches which will be places where wildlife can flourish.
I'd always been very conscious about wildlife gardening, how important it was, but about 6-7 years ago I thought, do you know what, I'm just going to go full tilt at that and just take out, not buy anything new that isn't sustainable, that isn't going to be useful for pollinators, for wildlife, and just absolutely just devote the whole garden to that and get away with the whole concept of tidiness, and that really suited me, and I wish I'd done it years before, because I'm not very tidy at all. So at first I noticed an increase in bird life, and quite limited to certain species, so lots of sparrows. Very occasionally, like over lockdown for example, there was a sparrow hawk. In fact, we saw dismantling one of the sparrows at the bottom of the garden. I'd never seen that before. Otherwise blackbirds and blue tits.
In spring, when the birds are fledging, especially the sparrows are around a lot, and I have a lot of ants in my garden, so it's rich pickings for the birds. And I also put up bird feeders in the spring, and they come and queue, and also they come and have baths, so they'll be... I've made more of a conscious effort now not to sweep everything up in the winter, but to just let it lie until the spring, and then till everything can come out and do its stuff, basically.
Let's talk specifics. What are some things that we can actually do to cultivate a more nature-friendly garden?
Well, sometimes it's not doing things. It's things like not using chemicals to destroy things, because they get into the food chain. You may not like slugs, but if you're a hedgehog or a blackbird, slugs is lunch. Leaving the place a bit untidy is quite helpful. If you want to spend the winter, if you're a beetle, let's say, and you want to spend the winter somewhere, a pile of logs is wonderful. So leaving a little bit of untidiness, letting grass grow long, even having a patch of weeds. Water is the key thing. We all need water to live, and even if it's just a plate with a little bit of water in, birds and insects will come and drink. But obviously if you've got a pond then you've got dragonflies and frogs and other sorts of things.
Generally, we're not that tidy gardeners. We don't have a lot of time, so there's often little piles of leaves and things around, and then in there you get worms and woodlice and all sorts of insects growing. So yeah, those are measures that are easy to take, I think.
One of the big things I did was just let the ivy kind of have free range, so I've got it climbing up the wall there. And it's such a wildlife friendly plant. It's amazing, and the insect life has really increased, particularly since I've had the ivy, I think.
On a community project like this, working with your neighbours and the people around you isn't just good for nature, but it's good for us as well.
I think it's really important and really enjoyable to work with neighbours on rewilding gardens. You've got loads to talk about, loads of things to share, and in terms of wildlife, it's essential really. Otherwise, you end up as a little what you might see as a little wildlife haven in the middle of a desert, and actually that isn't going to make very little difference to the welfare of wildlife.
Yes, well, it's very important to be part of a community. It helps us. It's good for the wildlife to be able to cross from one garden to another, and as you say, without borders, for birds to be able to perch and nest in different gardens, and have more and more wildlife friendly areas within the city. And I think to be part of a community, it helps us get to know one another. I think community is very important.
You know, without that kind of joint working, you really feel like it's an uphill struggle. It also makes you feel better, I think, if you are talking about these things with other people and you realise that they matter to them as well. It makes you feel better about the world. It always makes me feel better.
Nature's so important to me, I take it for granted, really. I'm worried about all the problems that we're having now and the fact that I don't see so much of the wildlife that I used to see.
It's not something, you don't have to be a wonderful gardener to be able to take part. You just have to be interested and find out a little bit about it, and then perhaps be quite a lazy gardener that doesn't tidy up too much, because the tidier gardens aren't necessarily the wildlife friendly gardens. So actually having a slightly scruffy garden where things are allowed to overgrow a little bit can be perfect for wildlife. So I would definitely say get involved.
It's a sort of a win-win really, and it's just been a lovely sort of evolution. So each year, you know, it looks slightly different. Things are slightly bigger or sort of climbing up more than they used to. I've got things springing up, so it's been an absolutely lovely journey really.
Because in a sense, what we're doing is not about the animals, it's about people. We're about changing human behaviour, and that will have an impact on the animals. We don't want to change their behaviour. You know, a hedgehog will be a hedgehog. What we want is to make life comfortable for hedgehogs and grasshoppers.
Gardening for nature. Individually, our gardens might not be wildlife reserves in size, but you've got to remember that nature doesn't see borders. With enough contributions, with enough little safe havens for wildlife, we can give a firm foothold and a fighting chance for our native biodiversity to bring its way back.